Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from August 27th, 2021, and I'm recording this on February 25th, 2022. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector hottest trending comics of the week. Each week they each put out a list of 10 books. We do a combination of those two lists to see how those books are doing 6 months later. We look back at what factors made them hot back then, what's happened since, have they continued to go up, have they continued to stay hot, have they fallen back, would you be better off having been patient and waiting for those books? This week we got 17 books to talk about between the two lists. So let's get started and see what we can learn. First up, we have Oblivion Song #1, the regular cover A. And this hit the list because basically it had been optioned for a while, but we got news that Jake Gyllenhaal was attached to the project. Back then it caused raw copies of the regular A cover to jump up to $30. 9.8 went for as high as $300. Now raw copies are $5 to $10. 9.8 of the regular cover will cost you $50 to $80. So this one crashed. I knew it'd all be back, which is because it's an option news. And as long as when there's no news, these books always fall back. This one crashed big time. Even more so than our next book, which was Oblivion Song #1, the pink signature variant. So this is the harder to find variant of the #1. I think everyone said it's somewhere between a 1 in 5 or 1 in 10. Back then, raw copies were going for 40 to 50 of this one. The 9.8 sales were actually a little less. They were around 250 plus, so just under where that high sale was for the regular A cover. Now this one's doing a little bit better. It's 10 to 20 for raw copies and 80 to 120 for 9.8, but still definitely a trap. Both of these versions of this book have fallen way back, as we're 6 months since we've had any news, and we're probably a while before we get any more news. So it could be another couple years before this actually becomes anything. So, and hence not a lot of interest in this book right now. So if you did have interest, now might be the time to try to track down a copy. Next we have Ex Machina, #1 from 2004. This is a Brian K. Vaughan, series that had been optioned for a long time, but we got news that Oscar Isaac was attached to the production in some manner or form, maybe to produce, not necessarily to be in, but anyway, he was attached, so this caused this book to hit the list. Raw copies were going for around $15 on average. 9.8 jumped all the way up to just under 300 at 290. Now raw copies are 5 to 15. The only 9.8 sale recently was still around 300, but that was kind of a one sale, and there's not many 9.8s even listed. Almost all the sales are raw. So this was kind of what I thought. I said I'll be back, and that's exactly what this has turned into. We may get this at some point, but no news on it recently. With that, we're going to move into out of the option news into news about a game. Basically, this is Ghost Rider #28, first appearance of the Midnight Suns. We got an announcement that Marvel was working on a Midnight Suns game, but if you look at the characters, it doesn't really match the version of the Midnight Suns in this comic. I feel like we've tried to make this comic something important for a while now. It's hit the list numerous times for various different reasons. Back then, the announcement of this game caused it to jump up to $40 to $50 for a raw copy, and 9.8 went for as high as $500. Yeah, now raw copies will cost you $15 to $25. 9.8 will cost you $150 to $200. This is another trap, another book that's come way back down. We keep trying to make the Midnight Suns something, but so far hasn't been anything really. With that, we're going to move into covers. We got 4 covers this week. First up, we have Something is Killing the Children #19. The Danny Leckert 1 in 25. Back then, this was going for 40. And if I stuck to the rules, as I've talked about many times, that if it doesn't get to triple ratio, it's probably not going to hold. It's going to come back down. I would have said, I'll be back on this. Instead, I said, because Something is Killing the Children had generally broken the rules, I said this was going to be straight cash. It was $40 back then. It's only a $10 to $40 book right now, with most of the sales kind of in the 20th to 30th dollar range. 9.8 will only cost you 50 to 75. So yeah, this one actually did follow the rules for 1 in 25 that only gets to less than double ratio. Next, we have Symbiote Spider-Man Crossroads #2, the David Baldeón 1 in 25, and this is obviously a homage to Spectacular Spider-Man #101. Raw copies of this were going 40 to 50. Again, I sort of ignored the rules. This one stayed a little steadier though. It's still an I'll be back. It's $30 to $60 kind of is the range on this one. So it's still right in that same range, but I would still probably call this an I'll be back because more sales are in the 30 to 40ish range that are in the 50, 60ish range. So yeah, still a really cool cover. But yeah, this one definitely also was one that you could have been patient on. Next, we have King Spawn #1. This is on the list for the second week in a row. This is the Todd McFarlane signed 1 in 250 variant that there was only 1,697 of. They knew the exact numbers. McFarlane signed them all. Back then, in the second week, it had been about $600 to $700 last week. By the second week, it was $800 to $1,250 for copies of this book raw. Now it's a $450 to $650 book. A 9.8 only cost you $900 to $1,000. So this one turned into a trap. I thought this one might hold a little better, but it seems like these have all settled back down into this kind of range of less than what they were when they first came out. So definitely a bit of a trap on here if you paid at these peak crazy prices. Our last cover of the week is Darkhawk #1, the Mike Deodato 1 in 50. This one was going for 75 to 100 so just under double ratio. This one I followed the rules. I said I'll be back, and that's exactly what it was. Now it's a $40 to $90 book with most of the sales in that $40 to $60 range. 9.8 will cost you $250 on this, but yeah, this one is definitely backed up a little bit. And it kind of followed the typical ratio rules if it didn't go over double or triple ratio. So with that, we had one Comic Buzz, or sort of Comic Buzz book of the week, I guess. This is Spider-Man #1, and this was the first meeting of the 616 Peter Parker and Miles. And last summer and fall, we had a bunch of these first meetings of characters suddenly become important and people start chasing them. It caused this book to jump up to a $50 to $60 book. Now it's a $15 to $40 book. 9.8 will cost you $150 to $200 still. I predicted trap on this one, and it definitely turned into a trap. These first meetings have rarely held a lot of value. Not to say they held no value, but rarely held a lot of value. And I was surprised this one jumped. I was surprised by this movement last year to really start chasing these. And so far, the few we've had that have hit the list 6 months later have not held the craziness of people chasing these first meetings. With that, we're going to move into our first kind of Disney Plus MCU related book. And this is Werewolf by Night #1 from 2020. This is the first appearance of the Jake Gomez version of Werewolf by Night. Back then, raw copies were going for $50 because people are speccing this. Supposedly, we're getting a MCU Halloween special on Disney Plus, and people are speccing that Werewolf by Night is going to be a part of it, and that this is the version they're going to use. A lot of conjecture here going on, but this caused people to chase this for $50. Now it's a $20 to $40 book. 9.8 will cost you $150 to $300. Pretty wide range there, but definitely still an I'll be back on that raw side. And yeah, I would still be pretty patient on this. We'll see, but it's going to be like a one-off anyway, is what they've indicated. So unless we're getting even like the series stuff, as you get away from it, these books are backed up. And so we'll see what we get here this fall for their Halloween special. With that, we're going to move into proper MCU stuff, and that is, this first up is Black Panther #2, first appearance of Shuri. This was, of course, following all the news we got about Black Panther #2, or about the second movie with Riri being in it. We had some books related to her last week, so it caused people to rethink about Shuri possibly being the new Black Panther. So her first appearance at 9.8 topped out at $1,100, which was a new high. Now a raw copy will cost you $100 to $200. and 9.8s are going 650 to 900. So this has been turned into a bit of an I'll be back as well. I have several here. The next couple books I put straight cash on. That was a bit of a mistake. We were really high on those back then. My guess is, I thought maybe we'd have a trailer by now, but we're not going to have a trailer yet for a while. So now would be a time. There's a bit of a lull if you don't want to wait till after the movies comes and goes. You're in a bit of a lull here now. You might be able to find these Shuri books for a little less. They're still going for pretty good value, just a little less. And our next book is Black Panther number 5 from 2009, the first appearance of Shuri as Black Panther in the 616. We have to qualify that now because of that other, is it King Set? Is it an annual? I forget now. There's another book that was an alternate universe version where she's shown as Black Panther before this that people found. But anyway, this is the first one of her in the 616 as Black Panther. Back then, raw copies were going for 160 to 200 plus. 9.8 was hitting 550. This one's also turned into a bit of an I'll be back. 100 to 200 for raw copies. 350 to 450 for 9.8. So again, backed up a little bit, but still going for good value. Next, we got a couple of Riri books. First up is Invincible Iron Man number 7, her first appearance. Raw copies back then were going for $125, and 9.8 was hitting 350 plus. I realize a lot of people say this is a cameo. I've actually not read this, so I don't know if this is a cameo or if I would make the argument like with 180 and 181 like I normally do. But anyway, this one doesn't go for as much as 9, but still goes for pretty good value. Now it's a $30 to $100 book for a raw copy. 9.8s are $250 to $300. So again, backed up a little bit down. We're again in lull without any news. Everybody's specking on stuff related to Doctor Strange and Moon Knight at the moment. So people aren't necessarily thinking about this because it doesn't come till late this year or next year when she gets her show. So, as I was editing this video together, I realized I skipped a book. So, we're going to insert it right here real quick. And that was Invincible Iron Man number 1. Basically, Riri kind of took over the title, even though it was still an Invincible Iron Man title. So, this is kind of her first cover appearance in the Ironheart armor. Back then, raw copies were going for $30 to $50, and 9.8 was going around $260. And this one's backed up quite a bit. Now raw copies are $20 to $35, so kind of just below. But a 9.8 is backed up down to $1 to $150. So it's kind of a weird the way they stretched out her first appearances. And she's in the armor, she's not in the armor. Then she's in the Ironheart, then she is Ironheart. And so, but anyway, this particular book had drawn some interest with the Riri interest 6 months ago, and now again, as we're in the lull, it has dropped back. And then the last 3 books this week are all related to, we got kind of a sneak peek of Spider-Man No Way Home, a little trailer, or a little teaser trailer. And we got, first up we have Amazing Spider-Man 544, the start of the One More Day storyline. Back then this book jumped up to 25 to 30 plus, 9.8 hit 500. Now it's a $5 to $20 book, with 9.8 going for 150. So this one turned into a trap. The storyline in the movie ended up being somewhat similar, but not exactly One More Day. Definitely a little different twist on it. And shockingly, again, no Mephisto, and everybody was specking on Mephisto again when they saw that. They were thinking, oh, we're getting One More Day, and that Strange is actually Mephisto. And yeah, so we're never getting Mephisto. Just deal with it. And the next book on the list is Amazing Spider-Man number 545. And this is the variant with Mephisto on the cover, which is the actual time when the marriage got dissolved and everything else. Raw copies of this were up to $35. 9.8 hit $275, which is a little more reasonable than that crazy $500 sale we had on the 544. But now it's also a $5 to $20 book raw, and 9.8 is $125 to $200. So this one also turned into a bit of a trap. Yeah, these books, not exactly the storyline, and even if it was, they'd be backing up right now anyway, because the storyline books just really don't usually hold after the movie comes and goes. And then our last book this week is Amazing Spider-Man number 641, which is the One Moment in Time storyline, or the conclusion of that. This was a little closer, to the trailer, but still not the storyline that was used in the movie. Raw copies of this were $15 to $75 back then, with most on the lower end, but they were creeping up towards $75. Now it's a $5 to $30 book. A 9.8 is $65 to $200. Yeah, that's a pretty wide range on a 9.8. That's $65, but there was also a $100 sale, and then there was a $150 and one. Yeah, so a little all over the place there, but definitely an I'll be back on this one as well, as not exactly the storyline we got. So that is this week's list, and if you were paying attention, you noticed that we had 2 books that stayed steady, and everything else dropped in value. There were no books that went up this week. This has been a very consistent pattern of 1, 2 at the most books going up here lately over the last few months. We are definitely in the winter lull. Plus, it's probably a little worse than a typical winter lull because we're having a pretty good correction from the craziness of last year. So books have definitely just been dropping back. We will see if it's spring, as things start warming up, if we start getting our usual spring increase in prices or not as we go through the next few weeks. But right now we're still in that lull. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.